today I want to take my vlog into a little bit more of a personal direction and kind of tell you guys more about my life. And I think that's important because I want you guys to understand me so that as we take this journey together of me doing my vlog and hoping you guys comment and give me advice, I think that it's really important to let you know how I became the person that I am today. And I mean, 32 years of history is going to be really long to explain, so I think I might do this in two parts. Yeah, let's just get to it. So I guess I want to get started by just letting you know kind of my background, which is, I mean, my parents are Korean and they immigrated to the US back when the American dream was still alive. And I mean, back then, Korea was legitimately a third world country. It was super ghetto. I mean, everyone was really poor, and they moved to the US basically because they knew that that's where they could give their future family a better life. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was the absolute truth. So, I mean, when they first got there, they didn't have anything. They had some savings, so they started a business. So they got really lucky in timing the industry right. They basically got into the fashion industry in downtown Los Angeles in the late 80s and the early 90s, where it was booming. So they got into that industry at a very, very good time, and due to that, we were very fortunate enough to have made a lot of money really, really fast. So a lot of people might not know this about me and my family, but we were really fucking rich during that time. But a lot, much like a lot of things, when you come into wealth so quickly, some people handle it very well, but other people are not able to handle it very well. And that was the latter was the case with my dad. He let the success get to him in various ways. He didn't know how to deal with it, and he got complacent with where he was, and he resorted to alcohol. He resorted to chasing after women. He resorted to not doing anything for the business after a while. My mom basically said, I still have a job to do. I'm going to run the business. I need to take care of our kids. And that's what she did. She basically took the responsibility into her hands and said, well, you fucking do your shit. I'm going to run the business and take care of our kids. And she did that. And she owned it because that's who she is. And she is resilient and strong and smart and powerful, and that's what she did. But unfortunately, as time went on, maybe a year or so of that, my dad's behavior became much more destructive. And when it got to the time where the physical and emotional abuse of both my mom and us, me and my sister, got too extreme, that is when my mom said enough is enough. And she said, I can't deal with this bullshit anymore. It's not safe. We're getting a divorce. And so they decided she said, F you, decided on a divorce and took me and my sister with her. But because of that, and that whole ordeal, and the fact that my mother had been running the business basically on her own, we lost everything. We went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. And, at that time I was like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and I saw the progression of this, but at the time I was too young to understand it. But that definitely deeply affected who I am today. For example, all of the physical and emotional abuse that I saw of my dad, and how the sudden wealth affected him. For example, that's something that I carry with me, and I know that, and I've told myself ever since a young age that that's something that I never want to be. I never want to be that type of father. I never want to be that type of husband, for example. But I mean, that aside, my mom she didn't let that experience break her, although it almost did. She basically confided into us years later that if she didn't go to therapy, if she didn't have that therapist at that time, she would have not been able to do anything. But because of that, because of the fact that she reached out, had therapy, and not just that, was so resilient, and had that drive to save herself and her family, she was able to pick herself up and rebuild once again. And that's the idea I have of someone that is resilient and that is strong and that is able to just fucking do it. And I mean, at the time of all of this happening, I gotta say I went through a huge rebellious phase. And I don't mean rebellious as in like a lot of other people where they go to, they do drugs, drinking, sex, gangs, or whatever, all of this stuff. I think still, even now, I'm still very pure of heart. So at that time, I just basically shut the world out. I didn't know what was happening in my childhood when, my father was abusing my mother. I didn't know. I knew that was wrong, but I didn't know what to do because I was so young. And my initial response, because I was so young, was to just kind of block the world out. Shut the world out, go into my safe place. And as I got older, that's kind of how I started to adapt. I used that defense mechanism repeatedly. Even now, I still do. And that's kind of how I just started to run away from things mentally, emotionally. And that's why, as time went on, as my mom was struggling to be a single mother, to provide for us, to give us the best education that we could, every cent that she made, she poured it back into our education, our after-school programs, our private tutors, whatever it might be. She wanted us to succeed the best, we could, give us every opportunity. And that pressure was something that always loomed over me. And I think at the time, I just didn't know how to deal with it. And so I kind of pushed everything away. I pushed her away. I pushed education away. I pushed all of it away. And, I gave her a lot of grief. I did really poorly in school. I mean, I went to pretty much one of the best high schools in the United States, and I almost flunked out. I almost couldn't graduate. Because I was such a shitty student. And this is really embarrassing to say, but I was such a bad student that I went in freshman year of high school, I was in Algebra 1. Junior year of high school, I was still in Algebra 1. I failed it twice. And the worst part is that I was in the same class as a junior as my sister, who was a freshman. We were in the same algebra class. Same with Spanish, same with chemistry. This was a reoccurring theme for me, and I just rejected it because for some reason, education was the most important thing to my mom, and I just wanted to reject what was important to her, and it was just foolish. And I don't know why. I guess it was just my way of telling the world that I was doing it my way, and I wanted to protect myself my way and do things my way. That's one of the reasons why even now I'm like pushing people away or playing defense all the time, because I'm threatened, or I feel threatened, or I'm scared, or I just want to run away. And that's kind of like the main thing with, I guess, this first half of my life story. I think that's the point I want to make with it. Um, so my mother, she struggled, she pushed, she built a business all over again, lost it again, and built another one over again. Just because that's who she is. But at the same time, after the divorce and all of that, me and my sister were essentially raised by our grandparents because my mom was the breadwinner of the family. But there were still times where we had to go into her factory, which was essentially a sweatshop, and work on the line. So, I mean, believe it or not, I know a lot about clothing manufacturing and women's clothing because that's what I grew up on. So when I touch a fabric, I am like, oh, like I know how cheap that is, or I know how much it costs to make that, so on and so forth. Just a fun fact. We had to help our mom, who essentially couldn't speak English very well, and had to translate the world for her. For example, there was a time where she was embroiled in a very intense legal battle, two actually, and I believe I was like maybe 15, 16 years old, or maybe 16 or 17, and I had to translate in my broken Korean what these like 20-page legal documents meant to her, and to be in there with her lawyer and process all this information at a very young age. And I don't know if I was like mentally or emotionally ready for that, but it definitely helped build me into who I am today. That's, I guess, in a part, one of the biggest pieces of my life and of my childhood that really built who I am today. And I am not ashamed of it at all. I'm actually I still feel very privileged, very proud, very thankful, thankful, always blessed to have been given the opportunities that I have up until now. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But at the same time, I do realize that there are scars, there are inner demons, there is past trauma, there is past, difficulties that I've had to deal with that have molded me into the person that I am today, and I still have to deal with. And those are the struggles that I'm still trying to figure out on a daily basis. And sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. And hopefully you guys help me to be what I want to be, which is just overall a better person across many aspects. Because I know that up until now I have failed in a lot of things. I know that I've also fallen upwards. Which, by the way, imposter syndrome is something that I have, and I think that's something else that I want to talk about in the future. But I think that this is definitely the first step into me just opening up to you guys, which is something that I rarely ever do because it's scary. But yeah, I mean, this is me, and it's not just always rainbows and unicorns and smiles. But I'm so thankful and so blessed to have this medium to be able to reach out to you guys and talk to you. And I hope to see you in the next one.